for joining. I'm really excited to get to know you all today and to teach and talk about such an important topic together. So a little bit about me. My name is Mel, and I'm a therapist here at Shift Collab. And why I wanted to speak with you tonight about this is because supporting friends with suicide or loved ones in general has been something that's come up in my life. And there was a time where I didn't really have a vocabulary of how to talk about suicide. And a few years ago, I started volunteering with Kids Help Phone, and I was doing training for their crisis line. And I remember just seeing the word suicide just made me feel uncomfortable inside. I wasn't sure what to say or if I could even be someone that would help someone who was going through thoughts of suicide. But I really learned just the power of being there to listen to someone in need. And I'm excited to share some of my learnings with you all tonight, and hope that you can walk away with better tools to support your loved ones who are dealing with thoughts of suicide. So before we get started, I just wanted to talk a little bit about who we are at Shift. So we're an integrated mental health firm offering therapy, training, and workshops. We have a team of over 100 therapists and 12 support staff nationally. And we are really big on supporting individuals through workshops and trainings at places like LinkedIn or Hero and Tulip. And we've also helped over 5,000 individuals through therapy and counseling, which is an awesome milestone for us. So for today, our learning goals together, I would say, are firstly to learn how to recognize that a person might be having thoughts of suicide, learning how to engage them in a direct and open discussion about it, and then moving quickly to connect them with someone who's able to support them with their thoughts of suicide and provide the support they need. So that will be through some education, some referrals, and then we're also going to get a chance to practice those skills as a group together. So before we get started, I just wanted to say that this content can be heavy for some people. Suicide is something that's very common in certain communities, and for others, it can be really sometimes challenging and taboo to talk about, or just plain uncomfortable. So just make sure to check in with yourself as you're going through the session, and pay attention to your self-care needs while absorbing the material. So if that means you have to take a break, that's completely fine. And I'm also going to encourage you to think about ways you can self-care after today's session, after all this is being thrown at you. So to start, let's talk about recognizing the signs of suicide. And I want to start with a true or false, and I'm not grading you, it's not a test, but really I just wanted to see if we can gauge people's knowledge around suicide. So the question is, suicide attempts or deaths usually happen without warning. And I just invite whoever feels comfortable to share either true or false in the chat. I know this can be a tricky one. I see a response. Someone said false, true. So a mix of answers. So according to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, warning signs verbally or behaviorally precede most suicides. So the answer is false. So it's really important for us to learn the signs and warnings associated with suicide. And many individuals may only show warning signs to those closest to them. That's why for many loved ones, they may not recognize what's going on. And sometimes it can be a bit hard to tell. So sometimes it can really feel like it's sudden or without warning. So today is really about showing you some information about what are some signs and symptoms to look for. So how can you tell if someone is having thoughts of suicide? Well, we can start by considering things someone may think, feel, say, or do. It's a common myth that people talk about suicide just to get attention. And this is not the case for most people. So it's always best and safest to assume your loved one means what they say. Brushing off their mention of suicide can really invalidate their distress, and they may feel reluctant to share these thoughts with anyone else or reach out for professional support. So instead, they might continue carrying their pain in silence, believing things will never improve. It's also important to remember that people often talk about suicide in vague or unclear ways. Your friends, your or loved one could say things that reflect a sense of shame or hopelessness or failure. And they may not go outright and say, I want to die, I want to kill myself. Instead, they could say things like, I just want the pain to stop. I don't know if I can go on, or I'm a burden to everyone. So these are just some important things to keep in mind when you're thinking about those signs and symptoms. So now I want to talk about things that someone may do. So sometimes signs that something is wrong can be more difficult to spot, like cheeriness, which may seem fake to you, or they may joke about their emotions, or like saying something quite alarming that's disguised as a joke. So just take a moment to look at this list. So some other ideas that you may notice could be sleeping less or more than usual, eating less. And it can be tricky, right? Because a lot of these symptoms can mimic other things that are going on in someone's life. And I want to alleviate some of that pressure as well from you as a supporter, that with these signs being really similar to other things going on in someone's life or other circumstances, it's not always so easy to know. The next thing is looking at ways you can make someone feel. So, for emotions like this, these are typically ones that come up with someone who's feeling suicidal. Maybe they're having things like persistent sadness. Maybe they're not as engaged in parts of their life they usually enjoy. For example, like maybe you were in a theater club with someone and they stopped wanting to show up. If they mention feeling things like hopelessness, or maybe they're increasingly irritable or having mood swings. Or it could be something completely on the opposite side, like being numb or without purpose or feeling like a burden. So, again, these are some things that can be difficult to spot. Now that we've learned about how thoughts of suicide can appear in different ways and just how unique it can be to someone's experience, let's reflect on our learning and confront some common misconceptions about suicide. So, first one I want to look at is a fact or myth. So, the first question is, there's little correlation between alcohol or drug abuse and suicide. So, feel free to share in the chat if you think it's a fact or a myth. This is going to be a tricky one. I'll give everyone a few more seconds to think about it. So for this one, actually, drugs and alcohol decrease a person's inhibitions, and they can also increase a person's impulsivity, which puts them at greater risk of suicide. The next question is about gender and suicide rates. So the question is, do more men die by suicide than women? So write if you think it's true or false. So that's actually true. Although women attempt suicide twice as often as men die by suicide twice as often as women. And I'm wondering, does anyone have any ideas of why that might be? Feel free to come off mic if you want and say why you think it might be, or write in the chat.
Men take more lethal ways than women.
That's that's definitely possible. Does anyone else have any ideas? Less inclined to chat about their mental wellness. Yeah, definitely. Both of those answers were really good. I think, like you said, Danielle, communication can be more difficult for men due to stigma. And also there's increased criteria for alcohol and drug dependence in men than women, which can really contribute to those suicide rates as well. And then the last one I want to talk about is people who talk about suicide don't do it. Suicide happens without warning. So this one is really about, oh no, Denise, that's okay. What you said was totally relevant. Sorry about that. So just to go back. So the last true or false was people who talk about suicide don't do it. It just happens without warning. So I see a false. Yeah, and everyone's right. So, although suicide can be an impulsive act, it's often thought out and communicated to others, but people aren't aware of the cues. And I just wanted to mention on the note of the last question, too, before we move on, despite those statistics, it's important to remember that suicide can affect anyone, regardless of age, gender, race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. Great job, everyone. So the next section is really about engaging in those conversations about suicide. And I want to start off and talk to everyone a little bit about language because language matters and is so important. And as we go through the session, you'll hear me say died by suicide as opposed to things like committed suicide. People commit crimes. And we know that we really want to try to use language that feels comfortable for people. So I encourage you to try to reframe and use died by suicide. And I know this is one that oftentimes people struggle with because people have become so accustomed to using the words committed suicide or a phrase like that. Also encouraging you to think about language around successful or unsuccessful suicide attempts. Saying that someone had an unsuccessful attempt means that we have someone that had they had been successful, they wouldn't be with us and that they couldn't die by suiciding successfully. So it's not really the message that we want to send to the people we care for. And then the last thing is language about behavior. So I don't want to pretend to know what someone's intent is. And I don't know about all of you, but I know that so many times in my life, I've had to say, gosh, I'm so sorry. That really wasn't my intent. What I do know is that someone who talks about suicide is more likely to die by suicide. So I generally start there as opposed to pretending to know what their intent may be when they make comments around suicide. So that's just some notes about language. And we have another truth or myth. So the question is, talking to or asking someone if they're having suicidal thoughts may trigger the act. So feel free to write in the chat if you think it's a truth or a myth. So I'm seeing two myths, myth. We have some knowledgeable people in the crowd. So it is a myth. Asking at-risk individuals if they're suicidal can actually help lower anxiety, open up communication, and lower the risk of an impulsive act. Because talking with that person can really help you determine whether or not they're seriously considering suicide. So in talking about suicide, the first thing I want to say is just show that you care. Reach out to that person that you're worried about and share that you care about their safety and let them know that you're someone they can reach out to for support. And you can open up a conversation in a neutral way with phrases like these. And when you're looking at these phrases or talking about these people, try to just focus on the whole person and not just their struggles by reminding them of their strengths and positive qualities. And also make space for your loved one to acknowledge the pain, sort out their thoughts, and gain perspective. And from that, they'll really feel less alone. And just remember that you don't have to solve their problems. Just listening without judgment can go a really long way. And if you're interested in these slides after these example messages, feel free to reach out after, or even if you want to take a screenshot, I can leave them up for about 10 seconds or so in case you want to take them down. So I'll just give everyone a few more seconds in case they want to screen grab. Awesome. The next thing when engaging with suicide is the importance of asking directly. It's okay to ask someone directly if they're thinking about it because it lets them know you're someone who notices things and cares. And it also reduces stigma and shame. Many people who are having thoughts of suicide struggle for a really long time before opening up and may even feel a sense of relief when asked. And when asking about suicide, you can also refer to the warning signs listed to make it clear why you're bringing it up, like from that slide where we were talking about those common symptoms. So for example, you could say, sometimes when people are joking about death, they're having thoughts of suicide. Are you having thoughts of suicide? Or I've noticed you've been more withdrawn lately. Are you having thoughts of death or dying? And I'd like everyone to now think of a warning sign and try to compose a way to ask about suicide. And if you feel comfortable, share that kind of sentence in the chat. So when you're doing it, again, think about including a warning sign from the other slides that were showing things like being withdrawn or being tired or irritated or things like that. And then incorporate in your message a way to ask about suicide. And feel free to use the prompts that are up here too to help you make your answer. I'll give everyone a few more minutes. I know this is like learning a new language in a lot of ways. So if you don't feel comfortable sharing, that's okay too. But I just wanted to give everyone a chance to see if they wanted to practice some of those skills. You're welcome to jump in. If not, it's totally fine. I'll give it one more minute. Thank you, Denise. So I see you wrote, I see you gifting your friends with some of your belongings. Can I ask why you're getting rid of so many things? Are you having thoughts of death or just not existing anymore? This is a really great response, Denise. I love how you brought up a reason or an observation that you've made. And you really asked directly. You didn't kind of beat around the bush or leave room for ambiguity. And that's a really great way to address suicide. And what I'd also recommend as like a bonus point, because I didn't even tell you this, is maybe try to ask one question at a time, just so that it's not too overwhelming for the person. But really, really wonderful example. Thank you so much. All right, let's move on to the next one. So the next tip I want to talk about is offering compassion. So when someone's having thoughts of suicide, what you say really matters. And you don't want to deny their distress or ask things like, how could you possibly feel that way? Or why would you want to die? You have so much to live for. And also remember that trying to solve their problems for them usually won't help, because what might seem like a small fix to you can seem really insurmountable to someone in a crisis. So instead, you want to try to validate their feelings and offer hope at the same time. And here's some examples of how you can do that. So we're thinking about giving that hope and also validating. So I'll read out some of these responses. That sounds so painful, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. How can I help? I know things seem bleak now. It can be hard to see possible solutions when you feel so overwhelmed. And the last one is, I'm concerned about you because I care and I want to offer support however I can. You can talk to me. And what I really like about these is that the person is kind of saying, I'm here if you want to talk. And they're also saying it's okay to feel this way, and you don't have to feel ashamed about it, but there's hope here. I'm here to help you. I want to be there to support you. Feel free to take a screenshot of this. And again, if you want to take these sentences after to practice, happy to send them out after. So the next tip is to encourage professional support without judgment. And sometimes this can be a really tricky one. And I want you to remember that you can't force them to go to therapy, no matter how deeply you believe it may help. And it can feel pretty upsetting to watch someone struggle alone, but telling them what to do won't work. So these suggestions we've discussed really show that you care, while also gently reminding them of your limits, because you probably can't offer any real solutions to their distress like a therapist who's really trained to support people who are having thoughts of suicide. So the best thing you can do is really just support them by encouraging them without forcing too hard. And you can even offer to help them find a therapist or take them to their first appointment. Those are some other great ways to connect them with some supports. And another important piece is just continuing to offer support. So if your friend has thoughts of suicide, but no plan or immediate risk, they may feel a little better after sharing their distress, but that doesn't mean that they're completely fine. They may continue to deal with suicidal thoughts until they get help addressing the underlying concern. So try your best to stay in touch and remind them you still care, even after the crisis has passed. And you can check it in different ways, like saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about you. How are you doing?" Or, "Remember, I'm always here if you feel like talking," just like you do with any family member or loved one or things like that. And just a reminder that there could come a time when you feel unable to continue to support your friend. And just know that you can only do so much on your own. And if you begin feeling stressed or overwhelmed or scared, it might be time to talk to other people in their life, like a parent or a romantic partner, and just encourage them to connect with trusted friends, family members, healthcare providers, and others who can be there to offer that compassionate support. So the next thing I want to talk about is resources. So when we're thinking about resources, this is very important in thinking about immediate risk for suicide. So if your loved one has a plan for how they're going to die by suicide, access to what they need. So for example, if they were going to use a gun or a knife or a rope or things like that, and they have a specific time frame in mind, you'll want to support them by getting professional help right away. And what you can do is just help your friend stay safe by sticking close or staying on the phone, and call emergency services right away, even if they resist the idea of getting help, but still express that intent to die. And they may get upset in the moment, but this action can really help to stay alive. And while we aren't all mental health professionals in the room today, a great way to support your loved one if they're not at immediate risk is by helping them to build a safety plan. So these plans are really simple and brief, and they generally include things like writing down warning signs of suicidal thoughts. So what does the person usually hear in their head, or how do they feel? Are they finding themselves getting withdrawn or agitated? Have a list of coping techniques written down to get through those periods. So for some people, it might be taking a bath or going for a walk or watching a TV show, and having that list in front of them can help remind them that when they're feeling suicidal and need support. Another idea is a list of reasons to reconsider suicide, and contact information for support people, and just steps to get to a safe place. So another example could be, let's say, they have a friend or a family member at home, they can stay nearby to make sure that they're being monitored and staying safe and things like that. And now, on the note of resources, I want to share a couple. And I know that as a service, we have people across Canada. So some of these may not apply, but I tried to pick ones specific to Canada, and that also offer different languages and they're accessible. So the first one is Talk Suicide Canada. So they have a phone number, a text line, and they're also offered for residents of Quebec with their own specific line. And again, we're happy to share these resources after the session, and I'll give you 10 seconds to take a screenshot too. Awesome. And I'm going to go to the next slide in a moment. So the next one is Kids Help Phone. So despite the name, it's actually a service available for people of all ages. They have a text line and a phone line for confidential and anonymous support. Even if you're above 29, they'll never turn anyone away for support. And I'll give a few seconds to take that down. And then the next support is Hope for Wellness. And this is available to all Indigenous people across Canada who need crisis intervention. And I really like this resource because it's culturally sensitive and it's available in several different languages. I'll give you a few moments to take that down too. Wonderful. So now we've reached the time of the night where we're going to think about how we can apply some of these skills. So the fastest way and most effective way to acquire knowledge is really by putting it in practice. So if you feel comfortable, I invite you to join in while we do a few exercises together. So to start, I wanted to take a look at this script. And the reason why I wanted to bring this to the group today is to see if we can test our skills on recognizing signs of suicide. So what I'm going to do is read through this script. And if anyone wants to volunteer to read it with me, feel free to write in the chat. I know it's also night and people may not feel up to that, but if anyone wants to participate, you're more than welcome to join me. Thanks, Danielle. Okay, awesome. So Danielle and I, thank you for volunteering. We can jump in. So welcome to your performing debut. So why don't you take on the role of Alex?
Okay.
Great. Okay. And for everyone else, I want you to take a look at this script while we're talking through it. And I want you to identify some signs and symptoms that Alex may or Taylor may be thinking of suicide. And we're going to come back to them in the chat together after. So I'll just read the kind of backstory. Alex and Taylor work for a glass company. Alex walks up to Taylor's cubicle and sees Taylor looking disheveled, wearing the same clothes from yesterday.
Hey, Taylor, how's it hanging? We've missed you at bowling practice the last few weeks.
I figured I would stay out of the team's way. I'm just a waste of space.
Buddy, spare the drama. Why don't you come out with us for lunch?
I don't want to bother anyone. Plus, I'm behind on my work. I've got to stay back and finish this.
All right. Well, if you want, I can bring back a sandwich for you.
I don't have much of an appetite these days. By the way, before I leave work today, I want you to take home our bowling trophy. I won't be needing it anymore.
Thanks, man. You're the best. I'll give you some space. See you later.
Thank you, Danielle, for your beautiful acting skills. Awesome. So why don't we look at this script for a second? And I want you to write in the chat if you notice any sort of signs or symptoms of suicide. And again, these might seem like really small things that aren't enough to really know, oh, okay, this is definitely suicide or something like that, right? But they're enough that we could raise some attention with our friends or loved ones. Yeah, I know. Withdrawing, no appetite. You're right. Giving away personal items. Yeah, Denise, you're right. Each sentence really does have a symptom. Withdrawing from activities, that's definitely one, right? Like missing bowling practice, being behind on work. And again, sometimes people are behind on work all the time, and that's not a concern, but maybe that's different for Taylor. Maybe that's out of character for him or her, right? Like, or them. No appetite is another one. Feeling like a waste of space. That's definitely a concerning red flag for suicide. Yeah, I think you guys got all of them. That was wonderful. And also in thinking about that, let's think about how we can be compassionate or caring. Are there any moments in this script where you feel like Alex could have responded more compassionately? And feel free to join in the chat or come off mic and bring that forward. Yeah, spare the drama. And that can be a really common one, especially for two men, right? In not acknowledging some of those emotions. And do you have any ideas of maybe what Alex could have said? Like maybe this would be an opportunity to even invite a conversation. Yeah. Hey, do you really feel that way? Are you feeling like a waste of space or yeah, inquire more about that. You mentioned a waste of space. Are you feeling like you don't want to be on this earth or are you feeling right? Like, yeah, why won't you be needing the trophy? That's a great question. Yeah. More curious and not shaming, which I really like too. We really want to be mindful of that. And in this way, Alex may or Taylor may actually be really trying to see, will someone notice, right? Are they going to pick up on my cues and thinking about, at the beginning, talking about intent, about suicide, right? Sometimes we come across someone like Taylor and we think, oh, they're dramatic, spare the drama, right? But there could really be something going on here, even if it seems like something is small. You're right, Denise. It is. It's like they're really testing to see if it's safe to open up. Taylor might be doing this with Alex right now, seeing if he's someone that he can confide in a safe space to. And the awesome thing is tonight, we're all really learning some new ways to open up the conversation in a curious and open-ended way. All right, let's move on to the next one. So I want to focus here on the idea of offering compassion. So we want to think about talking to someone in a way that doesn't try to solve their problems. So not trying to fix their desire to die by suicide, but also not denying their distress. So thinking about ways we can really validate their feelings and also offer hope at the same time. So to go back to the example, why don't I just go back to slide 15 for a second, just so I can show you the ones that we were talking about before. So these were some examples. You seem really down lately. Do you want to talk about it? I'm worried about you. Can we talk about what's going on? I know it can be hard to talk about your feelings, but if you want, I'm here for you. So these are all great ways that don't necessarily minimize what's going through, or try to push a solution on them, but it's also a way to, acknowledge what's happening. So I want you to try and compose a message to this. So Alex has just said to you, between my girlfriend breaking up with me and my cat dying, I feel like there's no one that actually cares about me. I may as well end it all. And when you're thinking about this, without normalizing what he's saying, like I want you to be mindful. Don't validate his decision to die by suicide. But also try to find a way to be compassionate to what he's going through. And I know this is a tricky one, so we can give some time for that. Thank you so much to everyone who's been participating. I know this is not an easy skill to build, and I'm really glad that we get to all practice together. So something I might say is maybe, thank you for sharing that with me. I can only imagine how hard this has all been for you, between your girlfriend breaking up with you and the cat. Yeah, so Jordan and Megan said, it sounds like you've had a lot of losses lately. I care about you and how you've been doing. How are you coping? It's a really great statement because you're validating, you're showing that you care, and then you're also opening up to even doing maybe some safety planning or learning more about how they've been managing all of this. And Denise, I love what you wrote too. Hey, that's all a lot at once. It must be quite lonely and hard to process because you're not pushing a solution and you're not in, sometimes like you don't have to ask a question back, just being there is really part of it, right? And then you said, I'm sorry you're going through all of this. It sounds like a lot. Yeah, I really like that because you're being empathetic and you're just being there with them through that moment. And maybe something you can even add is, I'm here for you, even if you just want me to listen, right? I don't even need to say anything or saying, you can even say, I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you. because we don't know the answers to their problems, right? These are all amazing answers. Thank you all so much for participating. So the last section is thinking about safety planning. So from what we talked about earlier, that's building things like a list of warning signs, coping techniques to get through crisis periods, a list of reasons to reconsider, contact information for support people, and steps to get to a safe place. So can we think back? Let's pretend that we have Alex in the room. What are some signs that Alex notices that usually lead him to think about suicide? Let's say we're sitting down with him. He's open to engaging in safety planning with us. What are some emotions that may come up for Alex usually when he's thinking about suicide? Loneliness. Yeah. Feeling like a burden, like he doesn't really matter. Yeah. Sadness. And these are really great answers to have on a paper or in Alex's phone, or things to keep on hand, so that when he notices, these things are coming up for me, maybe this is a time to think about it. And in a way, we can all use safety plans, right? Like, I know for me, when I'm getting really stressed out, I notice that I start falling behind on work. Maybe I withdraw socially from other people. We all have things that we do when we're going into our own sort of crisis mode. Yeah, great answers. The next thing is to think about coping techniques. So we know that Alex had said, that his girlfriend had broken up with him and his cat died. And, we can't assume, we don't have Alex in the room. We don't know what necessarily helps him or helps him feel more at peace or distracted or things like that. But what could be some possible coping techniques? And when you think about this, try to think about your own experience. Like for me, sometimes watching a calming show, spending time with others. Yeah. Calling a friend, exercising, great ideas. Maybe Alex wants to go volunteer at an animal shelter. Music, maybe going to bowling. All great ideas. And then in thinking of reasons to reconsider suicide, these would be really specific to Alex, and we don't want to assume anything about their experience, but maybe it would be something around, their friends or the bowling team that counts on them, or people at their workplace. Just inviting Alex to really channel in and think about those. And then I guess a bit of a test, contact information for support people. Did anyone have a chance to write down some of those referrals we talked about? I think we talked about 3, so maybe we can see if we can list them all together. So there were 3 on there. I wish I had a digital prize for everyone. Kids Help Phone, Talk Suicide. And the last one, maybe a newer one for folks. Did anyone catch it? Wellness Together is another really good one. Hope for Wellness. Yeah, great job, everyone. 911. Yeah, those are all awesome. And then the last part. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know when the 3-digit number will go Canada-wide. It's a really good question. Yeah, Denise, there's also so many local mobile crisis stations available. Those were only 3 of just so many other resources that are accessible across Canada. And then the last part of the safety plan is just steps to get to a safe place, right? So whether that's, going into safety planning, calling a friend to make sure that they stay close by to Alex when they're feeling suicidal, or maybe it's calling 911. Just having all of those in place will really help bring Alex to safety. And that sums up a lot of what we've talked about today. So thank you all so much for your active participation. It's been really just great to hear all of your insightful answers. And I can tell just how compassionate you all are and how much you want to support others around you. So thank you so much for making the time tonight to talk about all of this. And before we head out, I just want everyone to take a deep breath together. So why don't we inhale through our nose and exhale, knowing just what amazing work you did tonight, spending the time to do this, thinking just about how much you care about your loved ones and being there for them. And please remember to self-care after the session tonight. And again, if you're interested in any of these resources or phrases from tonight or things you'd like to borrow, feel free to reach out. And now I guess I'll welcome questions if anyone has at the end.